G'day, this is Glenn from Augie March, and you're listening to the Mixtape on Radio Freo. By the time we get around to releasing it, they're pretty much dead to me because I've spent that extra time, probably a year or two more, with the songs and the other guys while I'm writing the thing. Most of the music I've been listening up to at that point was mostly metal for me. I was a huge Iron Maiden fan.
This is the Mixtape podcast. I am your host, Mark. If you enjoy this week's episode, please feel free to rate it 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find over 140 archive episodes just by visiting themixtapepodcast.com. And there you will also find the link to my Mixcloud. On the Mixcloud channel, you can also hear the music that my guests pick for their mixtape. Also on the website are my social media links and YouTube channel. You can find all of that good stuff at themixtapepodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hello and welcome to today's mixtape for Radio Fremantle 107.9 FM and themixtapepodcast.com. Joining me today, it's an absolute pleasure to be chatting to Glenn Richards from Augie March. How are you, Glenn?
G'day, mate. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Thanks for making the time and coming on the show. So you're bringing a Moo You Bloody Choir 20th anniversary tour to Freo Social Friday, April the 3rd. Tickets from teamworktouring.com. If you're listening on demand, there'll be a link in the description as well. Excited to be getting that tour on the road, mate?
Yeah, it should be nice. I've been pretty much locked in a studio for the last couple of months making another record, so it'll be nice to get out of the road and do the real thing.
Oh, excellent. So is that more Augie March material or solo stuff?
Solo stuff with a band made up of Tasmanian players.
Oh, right, okay.
Should be ripper.
So the first question that sprang to my mind, Glenn, when I heard, so you're doing the album front to back, right? Is that how you're going to be doing it?
I believe so. We haven't actually discussed that. It just seems that, it seems like that's kind of the right way to do it.
Yeah,
I don't see any reason not to.
The first thing that sort of sprung to my mind was, like, I think it's fair to say, like, One Crowded Hour is probably your most popular song. So to kick off your set, like, with that, obviously being track 1 on the album, like, how do you feel about that? Is that going to be going? People don't want to be like messing around at the bar or still in the toilet, do they? When you start, we're going to miss it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's their issue. I think there's several better tracks on the record, so I think the kind of people that come to our shows don't really play favourites. I think if we had any fair weather friends, they dropped off many years ago, from that tune. But I mean, it could come down to just just the energy levels. I think it's pretty loaded up the top end. So if it doesn't really work that way, if we feel like we're halfway through the set and we need something better, something more powerful there, we might look at mixing it up a bit. But
okay, cool. Yeah. And are there any songs on the record that you've never actually played live before, or are they all pretty well been in the set?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. That definitely one. I mean, this is my memory, which is the worst in the band, but I'm pretty sure Wellington Reverie we never played live, and maybe one other, but to be honest, I've only gone through it once in the lead up to this, and I kind of gave up halfway and just figured, there's going to be a couple of dedicated days to it later on. Wellington Reverie, I've got figured out now. I figured out it's a different tuning, and it all came back to me, the muscle memory from writing the thing, but never played it live as far as I know.
Yeah, and musically, Glenn, like, are there any challenges in recreating the album live? Is there anything you did in the studio that might be a bit tricky to pull off live?
Not anything, I mean, no more than usual. The albums are very dynamic, and from song to song, it's always a challenge for us to go from one thing to another. It's not necessarily sort of genre specific stuff, but it's dynamic and mood. So it's not going to be a bigger challenge than normal. It's just going to be, getting familiar with those tunes again. And we have a new guitarist as well, so I'm kind of banking on him bringing some good energy to it and carrying us over the line, I think.
And you mentioned other tracks there with other energy apart from One Crowded Hour. So what would be your personal favourite track on the album, Glenn, and why?
Good question. Oh, look, I've got a soft spot for the last track, Vanuna. I think that's the last track. And mainly because it was just one of those very easy ones, and it was inspired by my little niece. Probably the other one was, if I'm not wrong, is the second last. It's just called Clockwork, and it's probably more like what I wanted the band to sound like than what we ended up. Just one of those flukes, I think.
And with the songs and your approach and relationship to them, Glenn, has that changed over the last 20 years?
Inevitably, yeah. I mean, I kind of lose interest after a record is released, to be honest. It's because I've spent that extra time, probably a year or two more, with the songs than the other guys while I'm writing the thing. By the time we get around to releasing it, they're pretty much dead to me. So I think having to go through the thing again, it's probably going to wake them up for me, and it should be quite pleasant, I think. It's like going through an old drawer full of old photos or something. You'll get something out of it, even if it's just a bit of melancholy or sentimental sort of feeling.
And I wanted to ask you as well, just finally on the album, Glenn, the physical formats. I saw there was was it a 10th anniversary? It came out around the sort of 10-year anniversary vinyl press of the record. Were any plans for a 20-year reissue or any bonus material or anything like that?
Yeah, I think we only just put it out there. It's ready to buy now. It's a double LP. Just inverted the colours on the album cover, and the vinyl itself is alabaster, I believe, is the colour that we ended up with. It looks quite lovely.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's a range of new merch and stuff, which obviously we have to get out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you can find all that merch and vinyl and all that good stuff, augiemarch.com. Again, there'll be a link in the description if you're listening on demand.
You're listening to The Mixtape.
The Mixtape is brought to you in association with Giglist. Giglist is your one-stop shop for all your live events. If you're looking to get out and experience some live music, you can filter by artist, venue, suburb or date. If you are an artist, it will take you less than a minute to list your gig for free on the website. The Mixtape brought to you in association with Giglist. Gigs in a list. All right, Glenn, let's talk about your mixtape track choices then, mate. So as you know, the show's called The Mixtape, and when I get guests on, I like to explore their influences and inspirations just by asking them to make up an imaginary mixtape or playlist, just to get to know them a little bit better. So the first track of the mixtape, Glenn, is an attention grabber, and you chose I Am the Fly by Wire. Tell us a little bit about that one.
All right, it's coming back to me now. Oh, long time Wire fan. I can't remember how I got into that band. It was probably just hearing something on the radio. Outdoor Miner was always my favourite tune of theirs, just for its brevity, and it's just a perfect little alternative rock song. But I Am the Fly was probably the first tune that made me prick my ears up, and structurally and lyrically, it's just it makes you. It is like a hairy blowfly in the form of a song. I guess it's sort of one element of that band. They were not. I guess I don't know how people really regard them. I guess they were proto punk, or maybe something along those lines. I've always heard them as just an experimental rock band with a real knack for pop melody, and that's one of the sort of outstanding weird pop tunes that could have been a big hit. I don't know if it was much of a hit. Probably was in the UK.
I didn't know them before you picked that, and I had a quick listen. I really, really enjoyed that track. It put me in mind what you were saying about weird and sounding like, it put me in mind of like Devo and Talking Heads in that sort of like sort of style of music. I really, really enjoyed that track. It's one of the joys I get doing this show.
Oh, great.
People like yourself introducing me to new stuff. Great choice to kick it off with, mate. Track 2, Glenn, is a song you sing in the car or the shower, and you chose Old Blue Rock Pile by Crow.
Oh yeah. Now that's a pretty easy one. They're one of my favourite all-time Australian bands. Favourite bands of all time, regardless of where they come from. That's one of they're what a terrific two-songwriter band, and this is one of Peter Archer's tunes. They both guys have got great distinctive voices, and Peter's is probably more leans to it's almost operatic, and this song itself is like the best warm-up scale you could ever sing. You know, I know all the words. I can follow it along in the shower, and it's like, this is how I warm up to go and do vocals in the studio. And I got a great opportunity. They did, I think it was their last ever gig way back in Melbourne. They've since got back together and done more stuff, thankfully, but this was just a great celebration. I got a chance to go up on stage and sing along with them to this song, and it's just the one that comes to me in the shower.
So I had a quick look at their socials, and it says they've got new stuff happening next year, new album cover this year, 2020.
Yeah.
So they've got new stuff coming out this year, so look forward to that for sure. Track 3, Glenn, your favourite cover version. You chose Bad Moon Rising by the Reels. I know the song, I don't know the Reels.
Yeah, okay. Reels, another one of my favourite Australian bands. They're best known for a song called Quasimodo's Dream, which is actually one that I've done done a cover version of before. That's just a glorious piece of music. Their cover of the Creedence tune it predates, you know, I think that the trendy thing to do these days is to do a really quiet and dramatic version of a pop song or a rock song. And I mean, it's really over the top as far as I'm concerned, but this is back in the 80s. They had a wonderful film clip for it. It's slow and beautiful and atmospheric, and captures what's already there in the original song and just exploits it further. It's a wonderful cover, and they're a wonderful band.
What makes a good cover version for you, Glenn?
Well, I suppose it's making you feel what's already there in the song in a more expansive fashion, or at least a different way, and I guess treating it like it's something that's not on rails. And I think probably this is something that we've never done very well, which is why I admire it when people can do it. But most of the cover versions we've done have just been too close to the original, which is probably just out of deference more than anything.
Track 4 of your mixtape, Glenn, is a song you wish you could play to your 18-year-old self, and you chose I Don't Want to Grow Up by Tom Waits.
Yeah. Look, I really struggled with that one. I just don't know. I don't know a good answer to it, so that was a bit of a flip one. I just did a run of shows with a great ensemble here doing Tom Waits songs, and that was sort of the one that came to mind. I think somebody did a great version of that one, and it reminded me of what a terrific tune it is. And I mean, it speaks for itself. Try not to grow up would be what I'd be telling myself.
What sort of stuff were you actually listening to when you were 18, Glenn? What were you into around that time?
When I was 18, well, I would have just been leaving Shepparton, and most of the music I've been listening up to at that point, because we had no community radio or no national radio out in the country, was mostly metal for me. I was a huge Iron Maiden fan, still am, but I was starting to get into the likes of, I guess, the shoegaze side of things, Ride and Swerve Driver, fair bit of R.E.M., Died Pretty, those sorts of acts. Yeah, but it was a very transitional year. It was the year that I left and went off to college in Melbourne. So it was all around me. I was seeing a lot of Melbourne bands as well.
I noticed Iron Maiden announced a tour, I think, over the weekend, and they're coming back to Australia this year. Yeah, you must like for that.
Cool.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, track 5 of your mixtape is a song you would put on there for a romantic interest, like a love song. You chose The Amazing Alice by Tom Waits.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I was torn between this one and So Like Candy by Elvis Costello. I had to side with this one because it's another one that I find myself singing at all kinds of times, not just in the shower. Wonderful, wonderful lyrics. I truly loved that record when it came out. I got it just as we were recording, I believe, our second record, and just in time to allow some of it to influence what we were doing in the recording of that record. But I never get tired of that song.
for me, it's one of his most poetically beautiful songs. It's a heartbreaker. Like that sax solo is an absolute killer as well.
Yeah.
Right? It's just so good. And I think for me, Tom Waits is one of the greatest songwriters ever. Like he's up there with Jagger, Richards, McCartney, Bowie, Hodgson's up there. I got into him. I got in a taxi outside a pub in the late 90s, and I was chatting with the taxi driver. And obviously, being me, the conversation turned to music within about 30 seconds. And he said to me, "Oh, do you know Tom Waits?" And I said no. And he said to me, "Oh, you should get into Tom Waits." And he directed me first of all to Heart of Saturday Night. And I bought that CD, and then I was off and running. Then Amazing Eyes, fantastic. Love Tom
That's the
Waits.
kind of taxi driver you're on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Right. Finally, Glenn, track 6 is a deep cut you feel is underappreciated, a B-side, an album track or something like that. And you chose Monday Morning by friends of the show, The Church. I've chatted to Steve a couple of times.
Yeah. Another long-time favourite band of mine. I think one of the most impressive and imaginative and expansive bands this country's ever produced. And for some reason, I mean, Monday Morning, I think it's from the same record that Metropolis is from, and Metropolis is probably one of my favourite songs of all time. Monday Morning is just one of those rare Kilby tunes that's it's not necessarily all sunshine, happiness lyrically, but it is such a pretty, lovely piece of music. And as usual, the Axemen are just doing lovely intersecting lines. And it's one of those ones that I very rarely moved to learn a song and try and play it in front of people, but that's one of them. I think it's an underrated tune. And Steve himself might say that it's a bit of fluff, but sometimes other people's fluff is your is your something.
One man's track is another man's treasure. I think he's the same.
That's all he's.
Steve's been a great guest on the mixtape. So your episode, Glenn, will be episode 140, I think.
Okay.
Steve was episode 1 and episode 101 as well. So it was great, fantastic chat. I love The Church. I think they're great. What I love about them is they're never just doing the nostalgia things. You know what I mean? They're always putting out new albums, always recording new material, and I absolutely love that about them.
You're listening to The Mixtape.
All right, let's round it out with the quick fire 5 questions, Glenn. We'll get into those. They're mostly centered around touring and live shows. So first one is, what's on your tour rider, mate? Anything weird, interesting?
Kombucha's about as weird as it gets.
That's good, mate. That's all good. No worries at all. And number 2 on the quick fire 5 is, do you have a pre-show ritual?
Jameson's. That's the second answer to the first question.
Yeah, I think I'd say 75% of the answers to that question involves alcohol somewhere along the line, shots of whiskey or something. Some people say, good for the voice, a shot of whiskey, and other people say, no, it's the worst thing you can possibly do.
Yeah. It's both.
Who would be your dream collaborator, alive or dead, Glenn?
Oh, gee. I guess Gillian Welch wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, she's been picked a couple of times there. She's been mentioned a couple of times, and some of her stuff's been picked as mixtape tracks as well. I need to try and get her on. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, you should.
Really big good one. And what's your favourite city to play live, Glenn?
Whew, that's a tough one. I don't actually have a favourite Australian city to play in. I could have a current based on a solo tour that I just did. I had a really great night in Sydney. That was took me back to the 90s. So also current Sydney.
Yeah, all right.
But,
that's fair enough, mate. Brilliant. And finally, in the quick fire 5, if you could time travel to see one concert in history, which show would you choose to see?
Look, I couldn't go past the Beatles in Hamburg. I just visited Hamburg for the first time, and I went down there. Gee, it's a dingy zone where they were, but I think I would have loved to have seen it, like a few other people, I imagine.
Yeah, Beatles is a popular choice. Woodstock's a popular choice in that one as well. All right, just to finish off, Glenn, once the Moo You Bloody Choir tour is out of the way, you mentioned solo stuff at the start of the interview. Yeah. What are your future plans, mate, for the sort of rest of 26? I imagine it will revolve around that solo album.
Yeah, very much. I hope to have it finished. I mean, it's I'm right in the middle of it as we speak, and I hope to finish it before I take off on this tour and when I get back from that, it can go into manufacture and have a release. I think I'm looking hopefully at a UK release before anything else. So that'll be my main objective.
Fantastic. All right, as I said at the start of the show, Move You Bloody Choir 20th anniversary tour coming to Fremantle, April the 3rd, Freo Social. Tickets available from teamworktouring.com. Glenn, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, mate. Good luck with the tour. Looking forward to seeing you at Freo, mate, and safe travels out west.
Likewise, mate. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks heaps, Glenn. Cheers, mate. Appreciate it, buddy. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Mixtape podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to go to the top of the page and rate it 5 stars, or give us a like or follow on social media at the Mixtape podcast and radio show. Don't forget, there's over 100 archive episodes just waiting to be discovered. And all you need to do is visit themixtapepodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.